This next one is kind of a fun one for me to introduce because the speaker is certainly one of my oldest and dearest friends in search marketing. We used to work together back in the late 90s, early 2000s, so yes, I'm going to show her age, but we look good for being dinosaurs in search. So, so we're okay with that, but we used to work together back at About.com, and Marshall Simmonds was the director of search and increased our visibility pretty significantly, which is why today you only find About.com in like every single search result. So we take a little bit of credit for that because we worked together training some of the people there back in the early days. So of course that little company got acquired by another little company called the New York Times, where Marshall worked for quite a few years, also bringing them up to speed with all the excellent strategies that worked at About.com and building in-house tools. And now he is taking that knowledge as part of his consulting group, Define Media Group, with an excellent team, and they've been working with other large publishers amazingly. And of course, Marshall's big thing is SEO is not dead, it never will be, and live with it, deal with it, it's going to be fantastic. Little known fact about him, of course, he has come out of his man cave in the garage where he keeps all these amazing 1980s video games, so if you're ever to go visit him, have some fun, you know, reliving the arcades of your good old days. So let's welcome Marshall.
Somebody knows to play Rush. Thank you very much. That's good. Hi, I'm Marshall Simmonds, and as Elizabeth said, I'm the founder and CEO of Define Media Group. We're an audience development, business management, and audience development, business management company. We advise a lot of publishers, mostly publishers, some in e-commerce. A majority of them live on the East Coast, and so a lot of them, as it turns out, require a little bit of travel for me, as I live in Boise, Idaho, right next door. So it's really nice to be in Seattle, and it's a lot cooler than it is where we are. So Chris came to me and said, I want you to talk about a lot of this misinformation and nonsense about SEO being dead. And you can't go a week without seeing some kind of blog post talking about the demise of the search industry or SEO as we know it. So it's a little bit irritating, as it turns out, because you know, what I'm going to show is that it's far from being dead. In fact, Google needs us more than ever. And that's evidenced by a number of things that we're going to talk about in detail. But I think we can all agree that Google is not a very transparent company. Insofar as, you know, they don't release a lot of data, but they did release some about a year and a half ago. And if you didn't catch this, it's worth noting because I use this slide in pretty much every PowerPoint that I give, and that's Google says that they found more than 30 trillion websites. They crawl 20 billion a day, and they process 100 billion searches every month. That's the opportunity. That's a huge amount of content, right? I mean, that's a good number to know. We can drill into that. But more importantly is the data that they gave after that, which is to say that the Google search team has made 530 improvements this year already to get it closer to the future. And when they say this year, that was mid-August. So what that amounts to, and if you drill down on their webmaster blog, on their webmaster tools blog, you'll see more detail around that. So I went to Dr. Pete, who works for Moz, which is just up the way from here. He actually lives in Chicago, but I asked him, I said, so how often are you actually seeing these changes that Google's making? Google says 530 made this year. How many are you seeing? He said, well, obviously depends on what you mean by that, but we see a lot. We see at least 600 to this point. If you get on their blog, you'll see that they talk about 665, I'll find the button eventually, 665 launches. That's minor and major updates to the algorithm that are happening. That's almost 2 a day. And that's one reason why the industry is always going to constantly need us. I mean, there's our validation right there. We are basically the new tax accountants, right? The IRS puts out all these new tax guidelines every year, and you need accountants to translate it and to basically wade through all the data to translate it for your clients. And Google is the new IRS, and we are the new tax accountants. Because we are responsible for finding out what's happening in these 665 changes, these 2 that are happening every day, finding out what the risk is to our network, and more importantly, what the opportunity is to our clients. And that's why SEO will never be dead. And that's the end of my presentation. So this is the most important slide on the deck, and hyperbole abound, yes, but SEO can't be treated as a project because they're changing everything every day. It's constantly in motion. So it can never be a project. A project is a start point and an end point with a project manager that tracks the development phase and the roadmap. We can never be done with this. And the companies that execute well and continue to bake this into the DNA of their company and of their content production process, they usually win out. Those that treat it as a bolt-on at the end of the day and say, oh, I forgot to do that, let's go back and do some keyword research, aren't usually going to excel very far. Because we continue to see all this kind of disruption happening with the universal search results. We see news one boxes, we see authorship, we see the site itself, the branded term, pushed below the fold. In this case, Apple is pushed below the fold for the sake of these other sites. We see images, we see video. There's a lot going on. We got the knowledge graph that we're going to talk about structured data in the next couple days, so we won't dig into it too much. But if you're interested about it, go read Dr. Pete's article about the data knowledge graph exploded. There's a really good article that kind of defines what Google is doing and how they're walling off that garden and how they want you to stay within the confines, because Google is now an ad network with a search engine versus a search engine with an ad network, right? I mean, we've started to see this big shift that's happening. The one-box popularity, this is an old study that Searchmetrics put out, but it shows the prominence of these digital assets and where they start to appear in your search results. And they're increasing. There's no better time to be producing video right now as a publisher, because we see video one boxes about 8 times out of 10. You'll see video results. And you see these numbers in universal search integrations continue to increase. This is something that I like to talk about. And sitting at my desk in Boise, Idaho, I do a search for Mad Men TV show in the Firefox browser, and I get this search result. And I immediately turn around within the same, we'll say 30 seconds, and run that same search in Chrome, and I get this search result. And then I run it in Safari, and I get this search result. 3 very different sets of results for the same query. That's because of the constant testing. This is the translation that we need to make for our clients, because there's new opportunities there. And then there's Search Plus Your World, which just gets downright creepy. So they know I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan because I've liked them in Google+. But when I start to search on just PHI, you start to see these results that pretty much show the profile that Google has on you. That yes, they're reading your email, but they know things that I didn't even know that they do. They know that I like the Philadelphia Eagles. I've probably searched on the band Fish because I've traveled to a few of their shows here and there. Phil Stetler is a good friend of mine. But this one about Phil's Trail is a small, unknown trail in Bend, Oregon that I used to run quite a bit. Never searched on it. Maybe I put it in an email somewhere, but they know it about me. So this is built into my profile. I just wanted to throw that in there because that creeps me out. More real estate for branded searches. This is how you take advantage of knowledge graph for your company. You should. And at the end of the day, this is where we earn our keep, is understanding Panda, Penguin, Hummingbird, and secure search, and that's not provided. How do we translate that to future-proof, to prevent it from happening to our network, and to get us out if something has happened, right? But at the end of the day, Google constantly moving those goalposts is an opportunity for us. Whenever Google makes a big shift with Panda 4.0, I applaud, because what it does is it creates an opportunity for all of us. It creates an opportunity, it creates a demand on our services, it creates a need for what we do, because somebody's got to teach them, tell them, translate, figure it out, and help your clients and your company. Somebody's got to do it, and that's us. So let Google move the goalposts all they want, I say. Issue as many Panda updates as you want, because it's only opportunity for those that are paying attention. If I hit that button again, I will jump off the stage. So the 3 things I'm going to talk about in detail are market evaluation. I just realized it looks like a drunk Pac-Man with bubbles coming out of its mouth. That's fine. I don't know why I didn't catch that until just now. I want to talk about image search, and then I want to talk about safe search. 3 things that could be threatening you that you may or may not know about, but all of it, see, there he is, the drunk Pac-Man, burping up bubbles. It's cute. So, SEO is dead, right? ComScore comes out with this report that says, that breaks down the market share for each individual search engine. It came out like 2 weeks ago. Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, ComScore, Conductor put it in a nice neat pie graph to show what the market share is. And you can go out there and look and see. Sempo also put out a study that talked about where budgets are going as well. Now, anecdotally, we've seen no decrease. In fact, knock on wood, we've seen no decrease in business for search engine optimization, for audience development, etc. We've seen the demand at the enterprise level only go up. Now, you kind of see that happening in the Sempo study here. You see some increase. A lot of it falls into the 48% of some increase or no change. Not a lot of some decrease, though. So another validation that that companies continue to pump money into SEO, but they seem to be taking their eye off the ball. So we did it. We went out and looked at our network, the network that we have. We have access to 125 profiles. We took all the Omniture data, we took all their GA data, and mashed it up, and we looked at 1.3 billion search referrals. That's how many we looked at a couple weeks ago for the sake of this presentation, because it's irritating when you see ComScore come out with data that is that misleading. And it's misleading in the sense that it's showing that 67% of your traffic is coming from Google. What you don't want to see happen is upper management look at that and say, well, it looks like traffic doesn't necessarily go where we think it goes, and start to pull budget as a result. So we did an analysis across 1.3 billion search referrals, that's with a B, and looked and found that the numbers are pretty different. Now, you can talk about the methodology that ComScore did, and there is some debate about it, and they've actually come out and supported about how they've done it, but we just looked at straight search referrals, and we found that it breaks out a little bit different. That Google continues to be our overlord, right? And we pray to the gods in Mountain View. That 86% of the traffic, of all that traffic that's search-related, is going to Google, with 6% going to Bing, 4% going to Yahoo, and the remainder going to AOL, if you remember them, and Ask, and some other smaller players. That's a pretty big difference. That still paints the picture that we need to be paying attention to search. We need to be paying attention particularly to what Google's doing. Conductor backed that information up as well. With their data, they looked at 100 million organic search visits over 6 months of data. We looked at year-to-date as well, and came up with similar data, that about 85% is coming from Google. So we come up to this very interesting battle, one I just came out of yesterday at the New York Times when I consult with them around search versus social. The New York Times had a report leaked 2 weeks ago called their innovation report, which basically said, Arthur Sulzberger, who's the owner, his son went out and did this report that said, we are missing the opportunity in social. And it was a big deal. Shareholders watch that kind of information. They want to see how innovative a company is, and if they're paying attention to the main traffic drivers out there. And one of them was saying that we missed an opportunity with social. Then that's disappointing, because we continue to see this social shiny object being waved in front of marketing managers and executives' faces that says, go invest into social. Go invest in social, build the team up, build tools up, put a significant amount of time and resources around building up our social profile. Meanwhile, search is usually basically it comes at the cost of search, and of that team, of that budget, etc. So BuzzFeed did this really annoying article in February where they said that they now know that Google has surpassed the need, or surpassed what search is delivering to their network. And their network was across 300 million users, whatever that meant. We couldn't get them to define what the methodology is. I mean, it's BuzzFeed, for crying out loud. They said, so right here, the blue line is Facebook. And they said that Facebook traffic has far surpassed what Google traffic has been, and it's going to be that way for publishers. And they said that this is across our tracking code that we have across all of our networks of 300 million people globally. We had to say bullshit to that, because there's no way that is entirely possible. And so what we did is we went out and looked across 87 sites, across several of our publishing networks that we have access to, mashed up this information again, and looked at 10 billion visits and 48 billion page views from 2012 to the end of 2013. Now that we're past the 6-month mark, we're going to update this information again, but it's going to trend up, because what we saw happening here paints a very different picture. And that's 41% of the traffic is coming to search, where 16% is going to social. That's a different story than we're hearing from the BuzzFeeds of the world, or any information that you read out there that's constantly saying you have to move budgets to social. You got to move time and resources to social, where we know that search continues to grow. In fact, it grew 53% year over year for publishers, 53% year over year from 2012 to 2013. That number continues to go up. So if that's going up, we do not want to reallocate budgets. It doesn't make any sense. Our job then as SEOs or in audience development is to reveal this, translate this to upper management, that SEO is alive and well and growing. In fact, we see it continue to grow. Doesn't mean that social isn't growing, because social is growing. We can see it. It's not growing at the same rate, and even if search does plateau, it's far outperforming. There's this other thing that I'm not going to get into, but go read the article about dark social that Tim put out. Very interesting that now we start to see social segmenting even further. That if I have a big following on Facebook, I'm not necessarily going to show and share what my personality truly is. My personality may be on Facebook, maybe on Twitter where I have smaller followings. I'm going to be sharing different information with those people. So we start to see the segmentation of social, which is going to further bite into this success and the effectiveness of it. It's a pretty interesting article. It's a really bad, it's the best I could get that image, but it's interesting. So, image search. Image search took a very interesting turn in 2012, and this is a bit of a longitudinal story, study, research project that we've undertaken, but hopefully can lend some light or shed some light on some of the things that you guys have done or traffic that you may have lost as a result. Because in 2012, Google image search looked like this, where you would click on an image and it would load it in the background. It would load that page in the background and you would get that click. You would get that the referral. You would see that appear in Omniture and Web Trends or in GA. But you'd see the overlay of the image. Now in late 2012, we started to see this carousel appearing. And in conjunction with that, we saw this change in January of 2013 around image search. And that was more this carousel model that you see across the top. But interestingly, and more importantly, when you click through on a picture of the handsome man Clooney here, what you see is no overlay. You don't see the site load in the background. And ultimately, you don't get the referral. But what you see here is you do see reference to the site right underneath George's name, and you see the visit page button. Everybody's seen this now. But as a result, what happened was traffic dropped substantially, cataclysmically, or whatever type of adjective you want to put on that. Google made that change. Refers dropped almost overnight. It was really eerie. It was kind of released on like December 31st at 11:59 p.m. and then boom, it just all blew up overnight. And as a result, it hasn't come back. This was a significant amount of traffic for publishers. They have galleries, they have photos, slideshows, they have all this information that used to be a huge traffic source. It used to be a way into the universal search results that was effectively shut down overnight. So Google came out and said that phantom visit was causing problems for some webmasters, and so we thought we'd do away with that. This is PFR. That's now gone. This, along with new options to reach publisher site, is a net win for webmasters. Here's the net win for publishers and for the webmasters. And that's across the board, across industries. We saw that net win. So how is that a net win when you lose that much traffic? So again, the job of SEOs is to look at the opportunity and look at the risk. So we see what the risk is. The risk is we're putting out content there that Google is effectively using. I won't say the word stealing, but because they're giving you reference, but we no longer get that click, right? There's a word for it somewhere, and not one that I'll say on stage, but Google's doing that. They're using your content, and they're using your images, and you aren't getting the click. That's a net win, apparently. They go on to say that instead of sending you over to a new page, we're gonna show you a preview of the image, and you can scroll through every picture that site has. Okay? Again, there's a bit of a walled garden happening here, where Google does not want you to leave, right? Because they want to show you ads. The Webmaster Guidelines, now we're kind of in a push-pull with what they're saying. Is that we want to make pages primarily for users, not for search engines. But these search engines are taking this, and we're not being able to. So what's the effect? So what do we have to do as a result? So about a month after this, we started to see a shift in what images were doing, what image galleries and what publishers were doing. And one particular site that we'll talk about here has done something very interesting, and that's we start to see this overlay happen, this watermark happening across images. And so a company called Pixabay, which is a great site. So don't go to Google Images anymore. I would say from this point on, only use Pixabay because it's open source, Creative Commons license. You can use any of their images. You can upload any of your images. You can get it all for free, and everybody's cool about it. And you get the click. We'll talk about them in a second, but that's my little non sequitur for those guys. They use this. If you are running WordPress, go get this plugin, which is the Images Hot Link Protection, which is WP Pick Shield. And that will protect, that'll watermark, and that will protect all your images. So when somebody clicks through at Google, they'll see this. They'll see the watermark. Okay? And that's Pixabay. Now, Pixabay started leading this charge by saying, we're going to give you access, sure, but we're going to really entice you to click through. We're going to use a marketing angle to get you to click through, to hopefully engage you even further, to get you to our site instead of dealing with what Google's doing. We want to use Google as the portal that it was intended to be. So Pixabay started to do this, and they saw an increase in traffic almost immediately. Click-throughs started to come back. So you see where the first arrow right there is where Google shut down or changed the interface to image search. Number 2 is where Pixabay launched their reaction to it, the watermark. And traffic was okay. The dips that you see actually are on the weekends, as it turns out. They don't have a lot of traffic on the weekends. It looks like a heartbeat monitor. But what they start to see, though, is this gradual decrease. So we saw an immediate increase, and then they saw this gradual decrease. And they finally realized something was happening. And when they went in there and looked, they realized that Google was taking out images that had watermarks. They were playing whack-a-mole, and they were cleaning it out. So, if you don't know this information, if you can't translate this, you have no idea why your traffic continues to go down. Now, so Pixabay does this. They remove the watermark. They basically have to go back to their basics and say, okay, we can't do this anymore. We have to pull the watermark, and traffic starts to rebound almost immediately. Unfortunate, but they're playing the game at this point. And it correlates interestingly if you look at what's happening here. So we went back out and said, let's quantify this. So we look at over 125 profiles, 19 billion visits billion visits from image search that we used to get, and we track that over time. And we overlay that with some of the major releases. So we saw some. You could see an uptick when Hummingbird was launched and then with Panda 4, but traffic has never, ever, ever returned to what it was before. And it probably won't. So the solutions are we're screwed, right? We don't have an opportunity around this, per se. However, there's a quick side note that Pixabay has started, and on their blog, if you go out and look, Pixabay has started to integrate the watermark back in and has seen some results as a result of Hummingbird and Panda 4.0. It's not nearly the results that we saw before, but it's an eventual solution. So you still want to optimize images for the contextual relevancy that helps search engines to identify the page and categorize it properly. Google may eventually change course. We went out to various publishing networks and publishing lobbying groups and told them about this, but nothing really happened. So unless there's external pressure, nothing is really going to change, but it could. But we basically look at image traffic as no longer a major source of consistent traffic, or image search as a source of traffic. And because this is the new normal. But it's important to communicate that new normal to upper management, that this will no longer come back to the levels it was before. You could use Bing, but more importantly, I would recommend using Pixabay. That's that. So switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about safe search. And not necessarily the safe search which is not provided, or Google securing the search. I want to talk about the inappropriate, filtered, explicit results that Google enacted and moved heavily into. But we got to do a little bit of history, and that is in 2012 they moved very aggressively in fixing, updating, changing the algorithm over the period of 8 months in 2012. They made a number of changes internationally to how they categorize content and filter it for explicit or adult content or adult language. So in December of 2012, you had options. You had 3 different ways that you can interact with search results. And that's with safe search, off, with moderate search, or strict search. You probably remember this. But what you probably didn't see happen is that during this time, Google made a shift. And they updated your browser, whether you knew it or not. You had options taken away. You had this entirely new set of filter explicit results on or off. And that's it. There's no happy medium. It's on or it's off. And you were immediately opted in. Your search results were filtered, whether you knew it or not. And this was as of 2013. That's a big change. So we go back through and say, okay, well, what happens? We didn't see a lot, but we did see traffic drop in January across a number of sites. And so we went in and looked, and we were able to segment it out to this change. And this change was over quite a few sites that may have used some language that was probably getting them filtered, and that's what we'll talk about. But this language was around health-related content, around sexual health-related content, around dating, content from major brands that you see at every newsstand that you go by and every checkout stand that you stand at. So everybody is in this game. You are not immune. If you think you are a major publisher or if you are an enterprise level site that isn't immune to this, everybody is immune to this. They change your browser for crying out loud. So not only are they changing how you interact with the content, they're changing the source. So what we actually saw was certain triggers in how content was created. I like it too. So if you have safe search on, and you search, we all have to be adults here, but for the sake of this, but you search on certain expletives, you don't get results, right? And that's what you were opted into. You had a filtered set of results, and you may not have even known it. Not only that, but your audience didn't know it either, and they were having their content filtered. But you're saying, yeah, but that's my voice, it's unique, it's how I interact with my audience, they want to hear this from me, but Google doesn't care. Google doesn't care. It is algorithmically filtering your content based on the terms and the words that you use. And so a lot of those terms could get you in trouble, no matter what you're talking about. So as things shift, though, we've seen some changes in the last year. You see terms that are maybe a little bit more acceptable. Maybe that the shift that is happening, the zeitgeist or the understanding or the tolerance or whatever it may be, that shifts how terms are approached, Google is shifting that. It's much more of a social consciousness that Google has around the content that they're serving you. So if it's acceptable to a larger group, there's a good chance that it won't get filtered. But there are solutions around this. So we found a site that got hit pretty hard by this, and that was the graph that I showed below, or before. That was about a 46% drop. And we were able to find and segment this traffic that was around sexual health. And we found that health-related content is okay, with a few caveats. And that's you have to sequester this information. So if you have content that's around sexual health, or it's around content that could be deemed inappropriate, you have to sequester it like you do parenting. And that means sitting it off in a subdomain, sitting it off in a subfolder where the masses can't get to it. You can't link to it off a homepage. You can do channel level navigation. That seemed to have helped. But you have to be mindful of your audience. If the bros of the world want to get to your content, you don't want to change for the sake of SEO, right? We don't want to necessarily have to do this just because. So if you have a savvy group that knows that that their content is being filtered, that they are opted in, then you don't necessarily have to change. And there's also, once you do all this, you can go back to Google and there's a specific safe search support contact address that you can reach out to if you think that you have been filtered. And if you want to learn a few things, go search on stop lists. Effective stop lists that you may need to compare and contrast the terms that you're using. Stop lists are good because these are things that Google will find offensive, and you can work those into style guides. Hey, let's not use this word, let's use that word. So, for example, a lot of bloggers like to use, well, we don't need examples, you get it. But we've seen that as Google sentiment changes, As Google's attitude towards specific terms changes with the greater public sentiment. And so as things are more acceptable, this terminology gets acceptable. And again, this is the last slide that I have because I realize I'm out of time. But once again, when it comes down to SEO being dead, all it is BuzzFeed attempting to get your click. They're trying to tell you that search is not dead. Our job is to make sure that upper management and our bosses understand that it still continues to drive a tremendous amount of search when compared with other traffic mediums. That's it.